women in generations past, as well as those who are present in today's society, and the influence that they have had in high-level decision-making, and for which we are so grateful, extremely grateful today. So, for instance, we know throughout most of Western history, women were confined to the domestic sphere. Their place was the home, while public life was reserved for men. Women were denied the right to own property, to study, or to participate in public life. And history also has it that in many European territories, women could not vote or hold elective office. But what do we see in our society today? An increasing number of women having to juggle their domestic lives with jobs outside their homes. And we also notice a more active participation of women in public life. So this has changed over time. We join our male counterparts around the table. We bring our talents. We must also acknowledge the fact that they too are bestowed with some talents or endowed with some talents and skills. But when we bring in our perspectives, our expertise, and make decisions that would help in the formulation of policies and laws that augur well for both men and women, our influence is being noted. In the region and across the world, we see many women in politics. Women help to spearhead effective COVID-19 response efforts. Their leadership has been commended, particularly in managing this pandemic. So this year's theme not only recognizes the significant role that women play in leadership positions, as the theme suggests, across various sectors of society, but more importantly, it encourages all of us to celebrate the continuous efforts of women, both young and old, as well as girls, in paving the way for a more equal future and a future that is characterized by equal opportunities for both men and women, free of gender-based violence, one that is peaceful for all. So this is what the theme really captures, and all of us, as I said, it is important for us to celebrate each other, support each other, and help each other grow. It is a time for us to reflect and empower each other, because we do recognize the significant role that women and girls play in the development of our society.
Thank you very much, Senator. Dr. Fontenelle.
Thank you, moderator. Good night, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Excellent. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you for allowing me this opportunity to be part of such a wonderful forum. I would also like to take the opportunity to wish each and every one of you, especially the lovely ladies, a wonderful International Women's Day. It is clear, it is very evident of your contributions, not just in the public life, but I'm sure at your homes. And so I would like to take this opportunity to wish each and every single one of you a happy International Women's Day. Also, I would like to take the opportunity to wish many of my colleagues, family members who are women, who are young girls, growing and looking up to persons like ourselves. I would like to take this opportunity to wish them a happy International Women's Day. In particular, when we look especially very convenient with the theme and what is happening, the pandemic that we are in right now, if we look just even at St. Lucia, what we see is we have several women who are holding the fort, who are making decisions. Fortunately for me, the majority of them are also my colleagues. So I feel very blessed. I feel very honored to be surrounded by such persons. And so there is one in particular who also celebrates her birthday. And she is Dr. Shanna Bernadette Joseph Labadie. She's a consultant in the emergency room, and today is her birthday. So I would also like to take this opportunity to wish her a happy birthday, and all the other persons. As we reflect on the theme, achieving women in leadership, achieving an equal future in the COVID-19 world, for me, what really stands out is, yes, women in leadership. So as much as we are focusing on persons like myself and all the other persons who have attained a certain level of educational status, we have so many women who are the pillar behind us. This is not taken away from the men, the fathers, the uncles, the brothers, but we would all agree that for most of us, it would have been the women in our lives who were propelling and pushing us to get to that level. And so I think it is fitting that we celebrate them. We give credit to women in leadership, as I have already indicated. These are the persons who have been trained to take those positions in policy making, decision making on our behalf. But those other women, it's quite fitting that they're celebrated. And so I am very happy that persons like us are part of a group who is pushing for equality for all women, for those who can and those who cannot, and celebrating women and girls around the world and helping them to shape a better future so we can achieve at some point equality for women just as it is for men. So for me, this is what stands out. And as I said once again, I'm very happy to be part of a forum where I'm actually sharing views and experiences with women who are part of leadership.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Fontenelle. And I actually just want to take some time to mention, as both you and Senator Polius mentioned, in terms of a lot of the women in leadership, in terms of even our COVID response. We have a lot of women heading our organizations, the Bankers Association, the Chamber of Commerce. We have, in terms of the Bar Association, the Medical and Dental Association. So we see a lot of our women breaking barriers, and I feel very proud to be here today to see this. Okay? Let us continue our conversation. Tell me, in your role, what are some of the challenges or barriers you've had to overcome?
Well, I think I see Fernando looking at me. Wow. I think for me, the biggest barrier that I've had to overcome as a woman is my size and height. Because I have been in management and leadership in most of the companies that I've worked for. And sometimes when you speak to somebody over the phone and they listen to you and they hear you in terms of the command that you carry, and when they actually meet you, then they say, oh my God, you so small or you so short. And automatically sometimes they want to change their attitude towards you because they feel they're bigger and taller than you. So it's that I'm bigger and taller than you kind of bullying thing. And for me, that's the biggest barrier that I've had to face. So a lot of people who know me professionally will see that at my home, I walk around with flip-flops or even barefooted, but at work I wear heels. And people always say to me, why are you always in heels? And I say it's because I need to make up for the height a little bit. Now, it may seem funny, But really, it's a reality sometimes that women go through. Sometimes because of our stature, our physical stature, we people and sometimes men look down at us because they feel that they are bigger and broader and heavier and stronger than us. So for me, sometimes what I don't have in height and in size, I make up for in my mouth. Some people say, and I make up for in my mind and in what I do. But I try as much as possible to prove my worth in terms of what I do. But certainly, I think for me, this has been one of my biggest barriers.
Thank you, Nancy.
If I may share, mine is along a similar vein, Nancy. For me, it's my youthful face. So, people, and I think my voice as well. So, like you said, people talk to you on the phone and, you have a conversation, sometimes a very intellectual conversation. It's professional and, and they're like, oh, yes, Miss Henry, and then they meet me and they think I'm probably 17 years old and they're like, who's this teeny bopper, that I was just talking to, making, serious decisions and having, a serious conversation, policy decision making. So I think for me, mine is my youthful face and my voice, I think, can come off as quite youthful as well. But what that does is I think it's kind of, I feel objectified by it. I feel like I become, this person that the men now feel they need to conquer, because of what they are confronted with when we actually, when we meet face to face. And that is a serious barrier because I'm not interested in sleeping with anyone to get to where I would like to go in life. And so, it's always part of the conversation and I don't appreciate it. So, I suppose my response is very blunt. So that may cause some tension when people are trying to make certain advances, but I prefer to remain professional. Let's do what we came here to do, please. I have a valuable contribution to make and I think all of us, at the end of the day would like to get the job done. So let's just do that and focus on that. So that has been a barrier. And also it kind of changes the level of respect that that one can command, especially in a room with men. Because I work with in law enforcement, the justice system, quote unquote, we work with police a lot. And I make a point at every meeting that I'm with police because the police organization is very male dominated. I'm sure the women there, feel marginalized. They feel like they are the smaller percentage, and they are. But the women have to work 10 times as hard to demonstrate that they're just as tough, and they can complete these absolutely incredible programs, these physical programs with more proficiency and more competence than the men can sometimes. So I know that in that sphere is very challenging. But every time I go to a meeting with police, especially, and I'm not trying to single them out, I love police. They're my colleagues. We work well together. But I always make a point to wear a skirt and heels because I want everyone to remember that I'm a woman.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Henry. So while we're on you, I just want you to tell us a bit about how your organization or you yourself has contributed to our COVID recovery plan here in St. Lucia.
Oh, well, COVID came and totally turned our lives upside down. And so, at that point, it's either you do or you die. You have to adopt resilient approaches so that you can manage with the new reality. So the laboratory, we at the lab, we're fortunate to have had the training because we do DNA analysis at the lab. We've done it from 2010. So we trained in PCR analysis, which happens to be the gold standard for COVID-19 testing at this time. And so we were able to use our skills to assist with the national testing, building national testing capacity on island between March and May of 2020. And then, I work with some phenomenal women, let me tell you. There are 8 women at the laboratory right now. And there were all of us who went across to join Ezra Long's team were women, and those who remained at the laboratory to hold the fort were also women. So we're in really good hands at the lab. But while one team was helping with PCR testing, the other one was busy chipping away at the backlog that existed at the lab. So we were really able to contribute in two spheres, with the justice system to clear that backlog so that we could respond faster to new cases that were coming in and helping build national testing capacity for COVID-19. Yes.
Okay. I really want to hear from Mrs. Charles as Director of Implementation. And she is in terms of the COVID response. So, Mrs. Charles, please.
Oh, wow. I say to some people, from February 2020, I have never worked so hard in my life for that entire year up till now, in my entire life. And that is the honest truth. Because I work in the Office of the Prime Minister, the Office of the Prime Minister was directly involved from the onset in terms of our COVID response. And one would appreciate that the Office of the Prime Minister would be involved in every single aspect of the COVID response. So, for example, perhaps while Fernanda would have been involved in just the testing capacity, the Office of the Prime Minister, myself and other team members, we would have been included in every aspect, including the testing, including the financing, including the health, including the response to the population, including knowing what's happening on the ground. So it was well-rounded, and we had to ensure at the end of the day that we were participating, advising, and ensuring that the decisions and the suggestions that were being made, there was a very good link in terms of communication from the Cabinet of Ministers to what we created called the Command Center. And so myself, and there's this beautiful lady from the Office of the Prime Minister called Mrs. Sharon Gardner, who have grown to, I'm not too sure if she's listening tonight, but my pillar and my strength. And it's a woman.
Yes, strength of a woman.
Actually, today I did send her a little message for International Women's Day, and I did tell her that I love her very much, and that actually I missed her because we've not spoken in a little while like we used to. But Malaika, I can certainly tell you that it's been a lot of hard work. There were times because we had to be working from home, and then when everybody was in the comfort of their home, we had to leave home and to go out and do what we needed to do. And so, for example, when we had the first total shutdown or the lockdown of the country in April of last year, there was a curfew, everybody had to stay home, and then I had to leave my family, my husband, and I had to spend a couple of days up in Castries away from everybody else because we had to be at Nemo, ensuring that we got those food packages going, ensuring there was distribution, etc. And then every single day, at the end of the day, we had to sit down as a command center in terms of assessing where we need to go with the team from health, the CMO, and everybody, and to assess and to advise the Cabinet of Ministers for their decision making. So certainly it's been that way, and for the command center, we have met every single day. In fact, we used to meet every single day, Monday to Sunday, every single day, until I think around Mother's Day. Minister Fede, who's the head of the command center, gave us Mother's Day the day off because it was Mother's Day. And then we continued, and then for Father's Day we got some time off, and then we slowed down, cutting away the Sunday meetings, and then we went Mondays to Saturdays. And then as we became better in our response, we now went on Mondays to Fridays. But every single day from last year till today, this morning, we meet every single morning at 8:30 a.m. at the command center, revising protocols, assessing where we're at, and making recommendations for decision making. We physically go out and do some of the work that needs to be done. We assist, we carry, you use your vehicle to drive around and bring this there and do this. So it's a lot of work, but I can certainly tell you it's something that I've thoroughly enjoyed. And I have to say, aside from Minister Fede being the chair of the command center is also made up of maybe about 90% of women as well. So it's quite a few women there as well in terms of assisting in the COVID response for St. Lucia.
Thank you so very much, Mrs. Charles. I really want to thank you and your team.
Malika.
Sorry, yes, Ms. Senator Polius?
Yes. I am part of the Dennery COVID-19 response team. And this is a team that was set up in October of 2020 at a time when community transmission became a reality. Yes, it did. A WhatsApp group was created for two primary reasons. And the first is that to help to expedite the dissemination of information related to the pandemic, and also to educate persons on strategies for the containment of the coronavirus disease. Secondly, it was to dispel rumors by providing information that came directly from official sources, so the command center, the Ministry of Health. So being part of the team and also the Senate means that I am privy to information that is trustworthy and accurate, which I used, of course, during my community outreach and education drives. So, for example, we went around the constituency to educate residents about the virus and some of the ways they can protect themselves and minimize its spread. When the medical team came up to the constituency to do the community testing, I was there on some of the days to distribute masks and to encourage persons to be tested. And of course, just to provide some moral support. I also play a critical role in the vaccination drive by not only taking the vaccine, I have, so I feel a lot better and safer, but also informing residents of the date that, the team will be here, there in the constituency, and transporting some persons to and from the center for their vaccine. So I am playing a critical role in our COVID-19 response efforts. It is also important that I reinforce in the constituency the need to collaborate in the fight against the virus. This is a health issue, not a political one. And yes, while I am vying for public office as a UWP candidate, I continue to emphasize that this is a health issue and we need to be able to fight together until we achieve that herd immunity to which, so many of us talk about. So I have been working with my team to distribute care packages, hand sanitizers, masks, and even food supplies to the elderly and some of those persons who are most adversely impacted by the pandemic. Upon request, the parish priest receives hand sanitizers as well as masks, and some of those are also distributed to community shops. Because it is something that is not second nature to us as yet. It's not part of us. Many persons go to the shops, they move around in the constituency without the mask. And when I approach, why aren't you wearing your mask? Oh, miss, it's in my pocket. And so I have to continue to remind persons in the constituency to wear their mask, to protect themselves, their loved ones, and other individuals in the constituency. So another way that I have contributed is through my engagement in community dialogue. I find it is critical, and I value the time that I spend talking with the residents to learn about how they have been personally impacted by the pandemic. And I do this in an effort to provide reassurance and also support. And in some cases, make recommendations to the respective, relevant agencies that can provide the relief or support that those persons need. So in a nutshell, my role in this COVID-19 response effort is a critical one. It's very important. And I believe that as a community leader, a potential or budding politician, I am not a hardcore politician, but a budding politician, and one who believes that every single individual in the constituency has a voice, has needs, and needs to be cared for. I value what I do on the ground on a day-to-day basis with the constituents. So I will continue to do this until we have this COVID-19 under control and when we can return to our normal way of life.
Thank you so very much, Senator. I want to hear from Dr. Fontenelle.
Can I add my voice?
Yes,
moderator?
Dr. Fontenelle. Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you. Let me just speak to your first question when you ask about challenges or what would have been the challenges. For me, growing up in the countryside, coming from Monsieur Choiseul, it was always a challenge. Reason for that is you were told or you could see that many of the girls, well, mostly everybody, but more so the young ladies plagued with teenage pregnancy, unemployment. And so I never wanted to be part of that group. I wanted to make a difference. But I also had the support of two amazing women, my grandmother and my aunt, who at that time, they were the pillars in my life and who kept challenging me and telling me that I can make a difference for myself. Making a difference for myself at that time meant leaving Choiseul and going to castries. The other challenge for me was I needed to go to what was at the time A-level college. That seemed to have been if you want to move up in life, you'd have had to pass through the A-level college. And at that time, not too many persons from the South had that opportunity, not because they were not academically sound, but sometimes the economic standing of the families did not allow for that, because it means you'd have had to relocate to the city, get family to accommodate you, and many persons did not have that luxury. So another challenge for me was to make sure I got there. And again, because of the poundings in my ears from my aunt and my grandmother, that the only way I could make it is by educating myself. Just to make a long story short, that happened. And then I pushed myself further and I said, there's certain things I want to achieve as the ideal woman, which would be having kids, having a home, having a higher education, attending university. And so I was always pushed in that direction, but it was always at the back of my mind. Am I good enough? Will I be able to achieve such? Will it ever happen? And if it did happen, how can I influence other persons? Then the softer side of me came out when I realized, having worked at the bank for 8 or 9 years at Barclays at the time, I realized one of my strongest points was speaking to irate customers, calming them down. And so I tied that into me wanting to be a medical doctor. And at that time, of course, I wanted to be a psychiatrist, but then it didn't allow me. My studies, family commitments did not allow me to further that route. What I did learn, though, is how much you can impact on somebody's life as a medical doctor, but not necessarily as a specialist in terms of being a pediatrician or being a surgeon. You were just as good as a general practitioner, because for me, the community was at my heart. When I sat in private office or even working at the hospital, and I saw in particular these elderly persons, and I could make a difference in their life, not necessarily by giving them a prescription, but by just listening to them, then I realized, okay, this is my calling. But the next challenge for me was, how do I put myself in a position to make decisions, to effect change? Because too often, as we would have discussed before, if you don't have a voice, if you're not at the level of the decision making, then it becomes very difficult for implementation. Your ideas are always well received, but the implementation process is always very challenging. And so these were the challenges I faced. And so I have constantly pushed myself, but not just pushing myself. Every opportunity that I got, I try to empower everybody, not just ladies, but also the men, the boys, because they form a part of the society that is either going to make or break women. It was very critical for me to help those persons understand that our fight for equality doesn't mean that we're disregarding or we undermining the contribution of men and boys in society, but we just want to work side by side with them and get the dues as the dues are owed to us. And so this is the direction I took. Right now, I am heading the mission in Cuba, and people ask me all the time, why that change? And I always say, it is not a change. It is just me serving my country in a different capacity. Amen. In that capacity, there are many avenues that allows you allows you to get into situations, get into discussions that ultimately benefits your country, benefit the people in your country. And so I did that. But what I would like to point out, with regards to how I have contributed, or how the embassy has contributed in trying to survive or navigate through this pandemic, it's very important that we understand the tremendous efforts and the works that are put by the missions. But I will speak on behalf of the mission that I am in Cuba. It's also very important because, as I always tell persons in other countries, you hardly find embassies being so directly involved with students. The largest diaspora we have in Cuba are our students, and the majority of them are pursuing medical degrees, and the majority of them are also female. So that is, it's evident that you're seeing progress in the making, where the girls, again, are pushing and striving to become better persons, educating themselves and putting themselves at a level. But the biggest challenge we had when the pandemic came, which is very evident in keeping with my field of work, which is the health side, was not that the situation was any different to anywhere else in the world, but very interesting was how persons needed such help in coping with the situation. In Cuba's case, I wouldn't even say the shortages that exist was such an issue, because that has always been there. But what we found is a lot of persons had issues coping psychologically. We would well appreciate that in any circumstance, especially if it negatively impacts you, no matter what the circumstances are, you prefer to be home with your family. That is where you get your emotional support. And so you have our students in Cuba who are away from home, who have to endure a lot of challenges on a day-to-day basis, and then having to cope with the situation with COVID, where there were restrictions, there were curfews, they were far away from home, And it was very painful because we had the unfortunate circumstance of 2 of our students losing their parents. And unfortunately, borders were closed and they were not even able to come home to give closure to that horrible experience or that horrible event in their life. Wow. And so the embassy has always taken up the responsibility of giving that kind of support. So we, apart from the fact that we participate in trying to get supplies for St. Lucia, we dialogue with our Cuban counterparts. That is almost expected, and I think everybody knows about that. But we would like to highlight at the embassy, it's also important that I mention that at the embassy, we are 2 women, the consul, Miss McGlaw, and myself. Okay. And I think that allows the embassy to have more of a probably maternal touch to the way we would have handled, the way we handle the circumstances surrounding the COVID situation. Cuba has had its challenges. They, like everywhere else, they have been trying to fight this pandemic, and so they would have implemented quite a number of restrictions which would adversely affect our students. Especially in the way that they would normally carry on or the way that they would normally cope with the challenges. And so that has been one of the highlights of the embassy. Apart from the repatriation, planning of repatriation flights, that of course was not with the majority. So it's still left with quite a number of persons there. And so even if it may seem little, the simple things like allowing or going to make purchases for students, some people find it very strange. But when you have students locked into quarantine, because the state has a responsibility to try to protect them, then it becomes your responsibility to help them navigate through these circumstances. And whereas that may seem insignificant for a lot of persons, the circumstances in Cuba allows or needs that kind of attention from the embassy. Likewise, for patients, one of the challenges as well would have been the patients who would normally come up for treatment. It was very difficult for some persons where their treatment had to be postponed, and for those who are already there having to navigate through those challenges. So we play quite a great role in what we call our diaspora. And with regards to the COVID-19 situation, it has been a big challenge trying to maneuver and trying to make our citizens feel as comfortable as possible, not comfortable in the terms of asking for comfort, but comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. And this is very important to note. So we take pride, especially as 2 women at the heading the mission, being able to bring that level of comfort to the many St. Lucians that we serve over there.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Fletcher, and to all the ladies for all the achievements. Sorry, Dr. Fontenelle, for all the achievements. I'm thinking of Dr. Fletcher, so I'm going to say, since you spoke about diaspora affairs, so I'm going to say good evening to Dr. Joycelyn Fletcher. And also to some of our ladies in the consulate, like Mrs. Tassa Ja, Mrs. Cheryl Francis, we have Ms. Joanna Salter, all women. Thank you very much to the government of St. Lucia, and especially our Prime Minister, promoting women in leadership. Okay, now ladies, I know about 3 of you. We spoke about the vaccine. You're fortunate to have taken a dose of the vaccine. So tell us a little bit more about the experience and why you think it's important to take the vaccine.
Okay, I'll start. Because I was a hard-headed one with respect to the vaccine. I took it, it's probably almost 2 weeks now. I kind of, well, let me be honest and say that I wanted to go through the motions of the symptoms of taking the vaccine. So I didn't take any sort of Panadol. that they would usually tell you. You should take Panadol before you take it, and after, and maybe sometime during the night again, or the next morning. So I did nothing like that. I just hoped and prayed that I didn't die. But it was surprising. I went through the motions. I had it started with chills. I was sitting at home, and I could feel the chills coursing through my body, and then I developed a headache and a slight fever, and I thought, well, now's a good time to go to bed. So I went to sleep. I think I was fortunate to have hydrated on coconut water. I drank an entire the $10 bottle of coconut water before I got the vaccine, and I think that helped me as well. So, but I woke up constantly through the night for bathroom trips, though, after having done that. The fever was gone the next morning, so were the chills, but the headache persisted for days. I had the headache the next day, and I felt fatigued. I felt a little tired the next day as well. And I just wished that the headache would go away, but I could have taken the Panadol, right? but trying to go through the motions and be a trooper, I didn't. But the next morning, when I woke up, I felt like myself again. I didn't even have the pain at the injection site. I didn't have that, but I lived to see another day. I went through the motions with my colleagues. They knew when I left the lab, I walked to get it, and I told them, if you don't see me in half an hour, come look for me. So they experienced it with me, and I hoped that I was trying to lead by example, and I hope that I was able to demonstrate to them that we can do this. That it's important for us at this juncture. One of the primary reasons I took it is because we are now actively involved in COVID-19 testing. So we work directly with the virus. So it was important for me to do so, to be an example to my colleagues, but also to protect myself and, by extension, my family and those around me. So I encourage all to take it. I completely respect those who would not like to take it at this time. I think it's important to become educated and to make that decision, to make that personal decision. But I encourage anyone who would like to take the vaccine.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. Well, for me, it was a totally different experience. I think by nature of my position, being in the office of the Prime Minister, it was expected that I had to take the vaccine. And I had no reservation. As a matter of fact, even leading up to the vaccine, with COVID, I became extra careful in terms of my activities. I'm a very carefree person. People who know me would know that I'm a very carefree, casual person. I'm not overly protective or anything. And because of the fact that I have a son who's on dialysis, I had to be 10 times more mindful because I really did not want to be the one to bring home COVID. And so I had to be warning my children, my other children all the time. Just remember your brother. But the brother who's sick was not mindful of that. And we had to be, and sometimes the kids would say, but mommy, you warn us every day. David is not well, be careful. Don't go out, don't allow people to come home, etc., etc. But David, was not very mindful. And sometimes I would have to say, David, you have to remember you're the one who's not well, and so forth. So in terms of taking the vaccine for me, I knew very early o'clock that whenever the vaccine was available, I would take the vaccine. However, as we got closer to the dates of taking the vaccine, I was not part of the first tranche. And then when Nicole said to me, listen, we're getting ready for the second vaccination program, and we're looking for influencers, so certainly we need you in terms of your position to take the vaccine, I have to confess I got a little bit scared. And so, when you listen to all these stories and people keep telling you, and I kept asking certain people, aren't you taking the vaccine? And they're like, no, I want to wait and see what happens. I want a few more people to take it, etc., etc. And so you develop that little bit of fear in you, and I started doubting, should I take it, should I not take it, etc. I read a lot about it, so I knew that it was safe. It's not that I did not know in the back of my mind, but you just had this little bit of doubt. And so However, I took it last week, and had nothing. I think when I told the kids that I would be taking, they were like, "Mommy, that needle looking really long." And when I saw that, I was like, "Oh my God, that needle is very long for sure." But I have to tell you, it was the gentlest prick that I had ever had. I don't understand it. I mean, everybody keeps saying that, so I don't know if it's because of the size of the needle. Maybe it's the nurses as well. You know, it was so gentle. I just didn't feel anything. I took my card and I was like, hoo. However, I bought, I had some paracetamol. And so I said, I'm going to make sure that I have paracetamol in case I develop fever, chills, and everything else that I keep hearing people talking about. I was normal. I went back to work. I went home. And then maybe about 11 o'clock, I was feeling a little tired, but it's normal, just tired from work. I ate, I went to bed. But before I went to bed, I said, just in case in the night that I am going to get fever or anything, I took 2 paracetamol and I went to bed and I got up and that's it. Never had any pain. I had no fever, no chills, nothing that Fernanda had, you know. And I'm fine. It's just a little soreness the next day in the arm, but that's about it. So it was pretty safe. So, I mean, I share that experience so people can understand that the human nature will normally kick in terms of you doubting and say, should I, shouldn't I, etc. Because you have a lot of information out there that is true and a lot of information out there that is not true. So people or ladies, gentlemen who are listening to my voice tonight, and perhaps you are going through that level of confusion and you thinking, I'm not too sure, let me wait a couple of months and see if these people don't die first or this, that, and the other. I can certainly understand that. But I do want to encourage you that Senator Polly spoke to it about it earlier, and CMO and the team at Health. We're looking to ensure that we can, one, resume our way of normal as early and as soon as possible, and the vaccine is one of the ways that we can do that. And in order for us to do that, we have to achieve something called herd immunity, because a lot of persons are saying, but if I take the vaccine, why do I still have to wear a mask? Why do I still have to be in quarantine if I travel, etc., etc.? Until we have a certain percentage of the population who's vaccinated and it limits the level of transmission, we will not get that herd immunity. So my encouragement to St. Lucians is to read a little bit more if you are confused and you're a little bit scared. It's okay to be scared. But get the facts and then think of the reason you are doing this. We've taken vaccine all our lives. I've taken every single vaccine since I was a baby. And I think up till recently I had to travel and I was told I had to take yellow fever or something like that. Because there are some countries when you travel you have to take certain vaccines if you're not too sure. And we still do it. So it is in our interest, it is for our benefit, it's for our family, it's for our friends, our loved ones, and for our country as a whole. So I would like to encourage St. Lucians as much as possible to take the vaccine. It's okay, it's safe. You will be okay.
Thank you so very much, Mrs. Charles. I noticed that the Ministry of Health...
Miss Moderator, can I say...
Yes, go ahead, Doctor. Go ahead, Dr. Fontenelle.
No, it's Senator Polius, I think.
Senator Polius, okay. Oh, who wanted to say something?
Is it okay?
Go ahead. Yes, Doctor.
Yes. Miss Charles, I'm very happy to hear that was your experience. It's a great thing that you're sharing this. It is true that many persons have reservations. And what I say to persons who ask me all the time, the first thing I do is to remind them that based on the decisions, and in that case, of course, it would have been their mothers, would have made many, many years ago, they are very blessed not to see the effects of certain illnesses that would have been prevalent if it was not for vaccines. And so I say that to them because they go and they read a lot of things on the internet, and sometimes they don't know how to separate the good information from the bad information. It's all good and well to tell them, well, you have to look to see which site is credible and which site is not credible. That is also not that easy. And so we have a responsibility to encourage them, to enlighten them, communicate with them, educate them. one of the strategies that I use, well, not really a strategy, I always tell them, let's look at the benefit opposed to the risk of taking the vaccine. And then I just give two scenarios. I tell them, so you're a diabetic, you've had issues, the doctor has told you many times that your life may be shortened, or you may have some kind of condition that's going to prevent you from moving around the way you want, or you may be hooked to medication or constantly at the hospital. You have an option of taking a vaccine that may actually help you to not suffer the debilitating consequences of such an illness. What would you prefer? To not take it and wait and see if that happens to be your fate, or to take it even when you have the facts that the majority of persons who have taken it have done well? I never give them the absolute that everybody who's taken it has come out well. You always have to leave this room, and the science tells you that, the facts are there. But you always encourage them when you look at the statistics. The persons who suffer the so-called side effects that are very fearful, or the fear, which is the numbers are so insignificant when you look at the total population or the total numbers of persons that would have taken the vaccine. And so I ask them, I mean, why don't you trust the people? I say to them as well, you go on an airplane, you don't even ask about the pilot. You don't even get to see the pilot. You just trust that the pilot is going to take you where you have to go. Yet still you have scientists, doctors, epidemiologists, analysts, all those persons who have taken their time to tell you that something is good and it is for your benefit, and you are doubting it. So sometimes when I go that route, it makes a little more sense to persons, and they become receptive. The other thing I know we've been trying to do is to correct the misconception that because when you take a vaccine, then you still must wear a mask, you still must social distance. It's a little confusing for a lot of persons. And so I'm very happy at the level of education that goes around helping persons to understand that taking a vaccine is going to help you minimize the effects of the infection should you get it, and then ultimately prevent you from passing it on to your loved ones and for them to get sick. You don't want to be the person responsible for that. When you have just taken the vaccine, you have to give your body time to develop the antibodies. And so hence the reason, as soon as you take the vaccine, it doesn't mean that you're totally protected. And so you shouldn't wear a mask. You should not social distance. You have to wait a little while. But also, like you rightly said, this is a new illness. It is being studied. Yes, things are being accelerated thanks to technology, thanks to all the new things, the new developments. And so we're able to do things a lot faster and in larger numbers now. But it is still fairly new. And until we get to the point where we could tell you, we know for sure 95%, 99% that you have total immunity, then the smart thing to do is to protect yourself just in case. And it is not too hard to still wear a mask, to still keep your distance in areas where you have to. You will get to the point where, based on the persons who are responsible for looking at the data and the statistics, to guide you further. So I think this is also very important for persons to understand. And I think when they understand it like that, then they become a little more receptive. And also, we must never forget to educate them and let them know that this is not all you need to protect yourself. You need a very good immune system. So you still need your sleep. You still need to eat properly, because you need to help your body fight. You don't all of a sudden leave the fight just for the vaccine that you're going to take. You need to help your body. You need to avoid other medical conditions that you may take a vaccine, but you also have other medical conditions that are going to manifest and put you at a higher risk. And so your diet is important. And when we say diet, we don't mean for persons to go and all of a sudden go start eating greens and fruits and so. You have to eat properly within the means of what you have. We have quite a bit of vegetables, and so you have to rest. And you have to see this situation as a global issue. It's not just St. Lucia. even the countries who are so much more economically stronger than us, they are battling it, and we are doing a lot better than a lot of them. And so if you take that into perspective and you see the situation as not just you going through it, yes, you might have lost your job. This is unfortunate. It is still not the best thing to tell somebody, but so many other persons have lost their job, because you know how you feel when something is peculiar to you. But at the same time, if they understand that they're in this fight together, it is not something that they are the only ones going through it, and there's hope. At the end of the tunnel, there's going to be some light. I think persons are going to cope, because a lot of persons are very worried. It is no secret that, we all have bills, we have kids to take care of. Persons are worried as to what's going to happen. There's a lot of anxiety, worry about the education of persons' children. And might I add, persons have expressed to me that we keep saying education is the key out of poverty. And now the education of our kids have been, it's been challenged. And so persons are worried for so many reasons. And that causes a lot of anxiety, a lot of emotional, psychological stress. And so it is very important that persons strike a balance as best as they could within the circumstances that exist, and for us to keep encouraging each and every one of us, the encouragement in whatever way that we can. I'm happy to hear Senator Polius talking about the outreach that they have. I'm sure these activities go a very long way in assisting the persons. Sometimes you assist persons not necessarily by tangible things that you can give them, but just a word of encouragement to assist them with just coping with the situation. I'm hoping that we will have an opportunity later on in the discussion to go a little further into the effects per se of the pandemic on women in particular, but I would like to stop there for now and allow somebody else a chance.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Fontenelle. And as
well said, Dr. Fontenelle.
Yes.
Moderator, can I?
Yes, just hold on, Senator Polius. I just want to inform persons that I know tomorrow that the Ministry of Health will be in Dennery North at the Larry Seuss Dennery Constituency Council, so probably you could tell them more about that. Go ahead, Senator.
Yes, thank you, moderator. And thank you, Dr. Fontenelle, for articulating some of the very same sentiments that I wanted to express, particularly where striking the balance is concerned. And it is important for us to remember that taking the vaccine is a personal decision. But we want to encourage every single person, particularly those who have chronic illnesses, diabetes, hypertension, kidney failure, those who suffer from COPD, to take the vaccine, because we've seen that those persons with underlying conditions are the ones who very often do not make it. They do succumb to the illness. So we want to encourage them as much as possible. So yes, tomorrow is vaccination day in Dennery North. The first one was the first time the vaccine was administered. That was on Monday when I took my vaccine, as well as many other persons in the constituency, as well as Dennery South. There were persons from Dennery South who came in to get the vaccine in Dennery North. So tomorrow, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., the medical team will be there to register and administer the vaccine to constituents. Of course, priority is given to the elderly, persons who are 65 and over, and those who have pre-existing conditions. However, I think it is important that other individuals who believe that they are exposed or they have been exposed should come forward to take the vaccine. So the center will be open from about 8:30 thereabout, to allow persons to come in to register and to be vaccinated. I want to encourage all of you in Denry North to come in to be vaccinated. I will be on the ground. There are some individuals who have already expressed their willingness to be vaccinated, so I will be coming to get you, to take you to the center and back home. In other cases, transportation will be provided to allow persons to come in and to go back home, freely. We want to encourage as many. So if in case you do not have your bus fare, do not worry about that. Transportation will be provided. And so please come out in large numbers tomorrow, God willing, to be vaccinated. You are doing it for you. You are also doing it for your family and the constituency at large. So don't wait, vaccinate.
Wow, that's
Wow.
a perfect ad.
Don't wait, vaccinate. Thank
That's
you.
a perfect
I
ad,
hope
Senator.
a lot of persons, after listening to both Senator Polius, Dr. Fontenelle, that they will go out and get vaccinated. Look at the schedule so you could go to your vaccination site to get vaccinated. Okay, we want to go into, in terms of, we spoke about the challenges of COVID, but obviously in every challenge, there's always opportunity. So I want, in terms of COVID, how it affected you, how it affected persons in the community, persons like Senator Polius, who's a community leader, for Fernanda at the lab, in terms of what are some of the lessons learned. Okay, if you want to take it from a woman's perspective, just what are some of the lessons learned? A lot of us have to be working at home, we're juggling, working from home, being leaders of organizations, being the boss. So tell me some of the lessons learned.
Oh, you want to go first or you want me to go first?
We should let Senator Polius go first.
I think
Senator Polius.
lessons learned for me is I don't like working at home. Oh my God. Wow. Added to your work responsibilities and you're working at home, you still now have the house responsibilities, and then you now have the kids at home as well. So it is the most challenging thing working from home. I certainly can tell you that. I don't know about the experiences of other mothers or parents, but yeah. So, but for me, lessons learned is that we have to be ready for anything. And I think when I see some of my women colleagues, when I see some women in my community, I say thank you, God, that I was born a woman because of the resiliency that I see of women in terms of those challenging times. Very, very, very challenging time, very difficult times. You see people have lost a lot, but it has created a lot of opportunities for them to be innovative and creative and to survive. So if there's anything that I have learned really from this pandemic is that we need each other. We certainly need each other. It's taught us a level of reliance on each other that perhaps we never ever imagined or never did before. And so whilst we were going up and about our daily lives, our responsibilities, and it's not that we didn't care about each other, it's just that your own personal responsibilities, your own challenges, you have to do what you have to do. It did not give you sufficient time to think of the neighbor and think of the guy down the street and think of your colleagues, etc. And for me, what the pandemic has taught me is that we certainly need each other. It's just brought us closer together as a country. It's brought us closer together as women, as men, as families, as individuals. and so forth. So for me, that's the biggest lesson that I learned from COVID.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Charles.
I'm next.
May I speak?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Dr.
Go ahead.
Fontenelle.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Fontenelle.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
For me, I learned a couple of things, but also some very disturbing facts. Many times we speak about the gender inequality, but the pandemic brought to light for me how serious that situation is. And I would only speak for St. Lucia, although it is a global issue. So we have most of our persons in jobs, a lot, especially the female, in what we call the informal jobs. These are the persons who they don't get sick leave benefits, the kind of jobs they do, or they're vending by the market, or they're selling their craft. And a lot of these people, they use public spaces. And so what we found happening with the pandemic is once you had shut down, obviously persons were not going out. And these were the first persons to have been affected by the situation with the pandemic. What it brought to light is how fragile the situation can get, how important it is for us to formulate, perhaps not necessarily, well, policies, but even before we get to that level, how we, in the case of women in leadership, how do we organize the institutions that we lead? How do we advocate for those persons who we manage, we supervise, to get better working conditions? So some of them don't have to resort necessarily to that kind of work, although it is necessary, but not for everybody, of course. The other thing that brought, at a certain point, it had me thinking was, again, when we say frontline workers, essential workers, we looked at the people that normally who don't have such high academic achievements, and so they work at the gas stations, they work at the supermarkets. But guess what? These were the people who were really serving us and getting us through that kind of pandemic, because we needed gas, even at the highest level, to move around. And so we needed them to work, even when they too were at high risk, because they have this constant exposure. We needed to eat, so even when we were thinking we need to close down everywhere, we still wanted the supermarkets to remain open, because they needed to be persons to pack the shelves and to sell, or even to take foods to our homes in whichever way. And so it really dawned on me that everybody's just so important. We say it, but I don't think I had actually internalized it until the pandemic, of seeing how important. Even at the hospitals, when we spoke of frontline workers, which is true, we had the doctors, the nurses, but what about the cleaner who had to make sure that the place stayed clean, especially in such a high-risk area with the pandemic, who had to be at work, who had to make sure that the place is clean so the doctor and the patients could feel comfortable and feel safe. So again, it just brought to the forefront of my mind how important everybody is, the role they have to play, but more so when you looked at the persons who were actually doing those things, the majority of them were females, were women, young girls. And so it really speaks to what we we're just talking about, that there really has to be change at all levels to take into consideration how do we move past COVID. Now is the right time for us to make decisions, change policies, change decisions, change the way we, even at our level, see things, even at our offices, what opportunities we make available for persons that we work with if we're in a position of power, and to see how we can accommodate them. Because so this is what I took out of that, and it's heartbreaking.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Fontenelle. I would want to hear from Senator Polius, but I just want Nancy, Mrs. Charles, to just say some of the things I know in terms of that COVID has affected a lot of persons, especially women, because a lot of them are the breadwinners in their families. But some of the initiatives that the government had to at least help alleviate that problem.
Yeah. Well, so Dr. Malaika did speak to some of the first set of individuals. We call them the informal sector, who were impacted from COVID. So as soon as we shut down, as soon as there was no activity taking place, you had those persons who were within the informal sector who they do not contribute to NIC, they do not contribute to perhaps a personal insurance. Most of them live hand to mouth, so you do not expect that they have some savings or bank account somewhere. They have their children that they need to feed. They have their trays, etc. And that is how they send their children to school. That's how they pay their bills, etc. And from a government's perspective, these were the first set of persons we thought about. How do we help those persons? And so in the first instance, when we initiated the lockdown to prevent community spread, we initiated the food packages with NEMO. And so the government put together over 10,000 food packages, and that we distributed throughout the island to ensure, at least for the period of time that we had closed, that persons would now have access to basic grocery items, and that you didn't have starving families and starving children, and to create a further pandemic on your hands. And whilst we were sorting out how do we deal with that, we also initiated the food, the hot meals program, because what we recognize as well is that you now had a lot of persons who were elderly, who were bedridden, who were stuck at home, maybe they were disabled, etc., who could not go out, and you needed to feed those persons. And so the SLHTA, in collaboration with the Office of the Prime Minister and the Government of St. Lucia, came very quickly on board and say, hey, we have all our kitchens open, our staff are here. Once you can give us the food, we can cook and prepare the food, and then you can find a means of delivering it. So through NEMO again, we used the cadets, we got government vehicles together, and we started delivering food from those kitchens. The various hotels, they came on board. And so you had hotels up north, hotels down south, hotels in Soufrière, and we just created a menu. We ensured that we purchased all the food locally from our farmers who all now had crops in the ground. The hotels were closed and they did not have a market, and so we had to now create a market for those persons. So you would now see, as I speak, the domino effect of the pandemic and the domino effect perhaps of the actions of the government as well, to ensure that you reach down to those persons and you protect those persons, the vulnerable, and those persons in terms of their way of life. And then thirdly, once we had that going, we decided that we needed to reach out to those persons who did not have an income, and yet still they could not go back to their way of life. And so the NIC, government reached out to the NIC, because this is not the mandate of NIC, but government reached out and negotiated with NIC to institute a method of giving monies based on perhaps the savings of the NIC to persons who were contributing to NIC. So if you were a contributor, it would have been easy for NIC to perform some sort of a calculation in terms of what your contribution would have been, what your wages or your salaries would have been, and to create a calculation or formula to provide you some sort of income. But people who are not contributing to NIC, we could not leave them out. So you talk about those vendors that we speak about, and you talk about our taxi drivers, you talk about a whole, it was huge. And I think that was an eye-opener for us as well, that whilst we said, whilst you think you know, once this pandemic happened and you started calculating and looking at the informal sector and persons who are not contributing to that fund, you recognize that you really would have had perhaps a secondary pandemic. And so government now initiated, outside of the NIC, creating that fund and making payments available to persons who contributed. We put in our own income support program, and that income support program was to help subsidize and to give some necessary income to small business people, to persons who are not contributing to the NIC, vendors, taxi drivers, persons who were impacted from the tourism sector, hairdressers. We also had to include the musicians because you had a lot of musicians who were also performing both at the hotels and some of them were musicians performing or impacted by carnival as well. And so when the Carnivals Association reached out, we recognized that we needed to now provide some sort of support. So as we went along, we had to include various sectors and various categories of persons in providing that additional income support for them. And then once we started reopening, government has now made available funding for small business owners now who perhaps had to close their business down. They would have lost income. Maybe they need stock. Maybe they need other type of resources to continue their business via the SLDB, make funding available for them to access easy, low-cost funding to be able to continue their livelihood. So these are things we did take into consideration. And as Dr. Malaika rightly said, when we looked at it, majority of them impacted were women, and not only women, but a lot of them were also single parent. And that in itself as well is something that would have impacted the children a lot because they were the only income earner. They were the breadwinner of that household. And in normal circumstances, sometimes the fathers would not step up. So you did not expect that under those extraordinary circumstances that they would have stepped up. So it created an added challenge and difficulty for women. But I'm very happy that we were able to step up and to provide. It wasn't enough, and it could never have been enough. And unfortunately, I think because of the pandemic, you had a dual impact in terms of the resources that the government would have been able to collect in terms of taxes, because that's where most of our money comes from. And so we did not have sufficient taxes and collection and revenue available to be able to provide that level that we wanted. But I think we were able to at least provide at least bread and butter on the table to ensure that some families could eat.
Thank you so very much, Mrs. Charles. Senator Polius, in terms of the challenges, lessons learned, you can go ahead. Senator Polius, can you hear me? Okay. We'll come back to Senator Polius. Ms. Henry,
Yes.
I noticed that you're part of the World Association of Women Forensic Experts. I mean, that seems like such, women in science, that's rare, so that's an accomplishment. So tell us a little bit about
That
organization or, how you became to be a part of it. Because it says forensic experts.
Yes.
So I do the best of the best. And as a woman.
Well, in forensics, you're deemed an expert by the court. So if you have testified in court and been deemed an expert, then you can only call yourself an expert.
Oh,
Yes.
So has that happened?
Yes, it has.
Oh, okay.
I have testified a couple of times.
We have an
Yes.
expert forensic analysis here.
But I actually got to learn about that organization through another organization for which I am the first vice president. It's the Caribbean Association of Forensic Sciences, and that organization stills to help forward or help to promote forensic sciences in the region, especially because North America has all of those institutions established. So there's Europe and and the East and so on. But in the region, our circle of forensic science is extremely small. So the CAFS Association seeks to promote forensic sciences in the region, to promote quality and professionalism in forensic sciences in the region. So I got to learn about the World Wide Association of Forensic Women Forensic Experts through that organization, and I'm very happy to have joined it, and get to meet and network with all of these women who are forensic experts and learn from their craft and their experiences as we chart the way forward to grow our forensic service in St. Lucia, especially. So that's how I got involved there.
Thank you so very much. So there's definitely no limit to what we as women can accomplish or achieve. Is Senator Polius ready?
I'm not sure.
Yes.
Okay,
Malaika?
she's there. Yes. Okay, go ahead, Senator Polius.
Oh, yes. So rather than talking about some personal lessons that I learned from all of this, I had a few informal conversations with some small business owners in the constituency. And the gist of the conversation, as it relates to the lessons that they actually learned during the pandemic, suggests to me that, and it's just like what Ms. Charles mentioned earlier, there is need for that kind of interdependence. And we did not realize that, and many of them did not realize how it is important for them to depend on each other, particularly during this challenging times. Okay, these challenging times. It is very important for people to depend on each other. And so one person indicated that to her, she learned how to improvise and to be contented with whatever she had at her disposal. She said something to me that I really want to share so that other young entrepreneurs can do the very same, take a page from her book. Particularly when unforeseen pandemics or, situations like that were to reoccur. And she mentioned that she had a business account. She actually created a business account. And this is what kept her afloat. So apart from her savings, there was this account that she believes, she should have created and, deposited some monies into in the event that something were to happen with the business. So she did benefit from the income support provided by the government. But when that came to an end, she had to go to her business account. And I think it is important for other persons who want to go into small businesses, and even those who are already into some small businesses, that they should set aside an account, create that account, so that the business can take care of itself in the event that something goes bad. Another valuable lesson that some persons shared with me is that they are a lot more frugal with their spending. So they would purchase only the essentials and not necessarily what they want. They would buy what they need. So they were a lot more frugal with their spending, and they showed a lot more appreciation for the work of teachers, particularly the parents who had so many children at home. They realized that the teachers had a mammoth task on their hands with 20, 25, 30 children in a class. So when they realized that, the children were at home and they had to devote some quality time to the children doing their instruction online, that is when it dawned upon them that a teacher is more than an instructor. That teacher is a parent. That teacher is a counselor. The teacher is a nurse. The teacher is everything. So they got to really appreciate the work of teachers, as well as those persons who have been risking their lives to save and to provide care to the victims of the coronavirus. So the frontline workers and everybody else, the health professionals, everybody who has been risking their lives and who have been playing an important role in supporting our people. So these are valuable lessons that I've learned. But personally, I realized that, my goodness, my resources were just not enough. They're not enough because I have to think of these individuals. So I'd rather stay without and try to meet the needs of those persons who seem to be in dire situations. So it is really about forgetting myself, making the sacrifices, and putting a smile on the face of the many who really needed the support. And that, to me, is what brings me the most satisfaction. The fact that I was able to assist others and to bring a smile on their faces. That shows that you really, really care. And we are about caring and demonstrating that care, not just by word, but by our actions and the way we interact with the residents.
Thank you so very much, Senator.
If I can share about opportunities that this whole COVID-19 situation has presented, and the lessons that I've learned from experiencing this. Well, with respect to lessons learned, working together, as everyone has highlighted in their contributions, I really understood how important it is for us to work together. We talk about, we say, oh, we're all in this together, we're all in this together. We say it so loosely, but we really are. And when we understand, that interdependence that is necessary for us to put our resources together, to put our talents together and our skills together, then there isn't anything that we cannot accomplish. And that was a serious lesson that I learned, because I saw what happened when we didn't work together, and I could also see what happened when we did. And so, it really brought home how important it is for us to work together and remember that we really are all in this together. Another valuable lesson was trust, to trust the people around, because, as I said, I was away from my institution for a little while, and so I had to trust that everybody who was there, they were doing what they were supposed to do. Yes, and they did it, and they did it excellently. So it really helped me to trust the team, and again foster, that sense of we are all in this together. We have your back, sort of thing. Personally, well, it was absolutely impossible for me to work from home because that was just not an option. So I was gone early and back late. The children would be sleeping already, and then they would complain and say, "Mom, we're not seeing you." So that was where the beauty and the appreciation of my village came in. And I don't think I could have done it without my village. So, it brought us back to that, we need each other, and we need help, and to say when we need help. So the village was a very important lesson for me as well. And lastly, the opportunities that it presented professionally, not just for myself, but for the people whom I lead, as a female leader, and being empathetic to the needs of the other women on my staff. They are mothers, they are wives, they have kids too who were home, having to be homeschooled. So I had to be empathetic to that and ask them. I asked them, what do you need? Let me know what your need is, and let's see how we can make it work. And I found that we were more productive, even with people needing to take time off, because everybody just gave that extra, they did. So they really stepped up, and as women, that our theme for independence, we can and we will, the women really demonstrated that they could, and they did. And lastly, for the laboratory, and in terms of, the lab gets a lot of flack. I mean, it's well known that the laboratory, people not sure if it's open, if it's running, what's happening. So it was an opportunity presented itself for us to restart our DNA service. And the blessings just flowed from everywhere. I kid you not. And that's the only way I can describe it. The blessings just flowed. So, we started training again. We got a donation of equipment, and then people came to help us. People are volunteering. Then they want to send us more equipment.
Oh, wow.
It's absolutely that our Minister of Finance approved cutting edge technology. I mean, when we get this piece of equipment, let me tell you, St. Lucia is really going to be poised to be, the envy of the region with respect to forensics. And I'm so happy that the female, predominantly female-led team that I have, we will make it happen because, that commitment, that will, that passion is there. So the opportunities that it presented, we are really benefiting from, and we are truly grateful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so very much, Ms. Henry. So as you all are leaders in your own way, in your organizations, we are in a position to help accelerate women's equality. So I would like each of you to just give women out there some advice on how they can become a leader. And some of them aspire to be a leader, so some words on that, how could they become a leader? Because we need persons to be able to push equality more.
Well, be brave. And it's important for us as empowered women to empower other women. It's important for us to recognize talent and those skills, the skills that make a leader. Someone who naturally, you can see natural leaders, they naturally lead. You can see those who speak well, those who interact well with people. They have a good rapport with people, and we need to have eyes as women to recognize that in our girls and to encourage them, and not tell them to shut up, or you're talking too much. We can help them to express themselves well without being disrespectful. So I think as Caribbean parents, we tend to do that a lot to our girls. We tell, as if women are, women are seen and not heard.
Girls are seen and not heard.
Well, we need to throw that out with the bathwater. So we need to be able to empower our girls and help them, to be brave, to take risks. Without risk, there's great reward, and to not be afraid to make mistakes. I tell my staff all the time, I'm not afraid to make. I remember the first time I said it, and they were just like shocked. And I said, well, I don't think we've made enough mistakes, because we have to make mistakes. You will only get it right once, but you have several opportunities to make mistakes, and that's where the growth can happen. So to be, my advice would be brave, take risks, speak your truth, own it, try to get to know who you are. That's so important. And in the age of social media, is very challenging, because I'm living it with my daughters, to help our girls to know who they are, to help them to be grounded spiritually, psychologically, and have good self-esteem. So all of those things, and we have the responsibility. I think adults have the responsibility to nurture good leaders, so we must really take the time to identify those skills in our girls, and to truly nurture that, mentor them, and teach them, and help them work through mistakes, because mistakes are part of life, and they're okay, and they're good to me. So
thank you very much, Ms. Henry.
I think becoming a leader means, one, you need to set the example. And then I'm talking from me growing up. I grew up with my grandmother. I didn't get to know my mom maybe until I was about 10 or something like that. But I grew up with my grandmother. And my grandmother set the tone for who I am and who I've become. She set the example, unfortunately, of you do as I say, not as I do. And so, for example, she liked her little drink, her little white rum, but you were not allowed to even touch the bottle, So, but my grandmother was this strong woman, and she always wanted me to be this strong young lady. So from very early, I remember growing up that my grandmother did not really speak English, but she understood English. And so whilst I didn't get licks for speaking Creole because she taught me Creole and I speak Creole very fluently. She ensured that I speak to her in English. She would respond to me in Creole, and then I would respond back in English. So we were conversing, and so that's why I said, while she probably did not understand it, did not speak it, sorry, but she understood it because we would converse growing up, etc. So, but she was really this, I don't know, I saw a strength in my grandmother growing up that I inherited. I think I inherited as well. And that's why I say set the example, because this is the example I'm setting for my girls and my boys. Because it's one thing in our home that we did not raise the boys differently to the girls. I have 4 children. I have 2 girls and 2 boys, and I tried as much as possible to set the same standard for everybody. Because what I do recognize as well, in order for us to have a balanced society, we need to retrain our boys as well. We need to have better standards for our boys. And so that is where the change will come, so that our boys can learn to respect our girls. But Fernanda said something which is very, very critical. It is to know who you are and to know what you want. And some young ladies don't get to know what they want until later in life, and that's okay. That's okay. But you need to know who you are. And as parents, it is very important for us to help them to know who they are. It is very important for us to be open. It is very important for us to understand. And it is very important for us to nurture them in terms of who they are and who they want to be. And so, for example, I've never said to any of my children, when you grow up, I want you to be a doctor, a lawyer, a this or that. Whereas, this is what parents dream and desire for their kids. I've never, ever had that desire for any one of my children. Every single one of them, I always ask them, what is it that you love? What is it that you want to do? What is it that you're passionate about? And whatever it is, as your parent, what I will do is to help you and to support you to do this to the best of your ability. And I think if more of us practice and we try to do that, we would be nurturing and creating strong women who know who they are, who know what is it that they want, and they will go for it. There will be a lot of obstacles in your way, a lot. But there's one thing I say to my kids and to myself every day. There are 10 ways to skin a cat. So in spite of the obstacles, you know where it is that you want to go, just find another route. There are many routes to get to your destination. And so it is not always that one route that you should take. And so we need to teach them and train them how to overcome those obstacles and not give up at the first sign of, as you say, the mistakes. I mean, long time ago when a young girl got pregnant at the age of 13, 14 or 15, that's it. Their life, their career was over. But now there are so many opportunities that young girls who do end up being pregnant at an early age. For example, if you go into secondary school, you can go have your baby and go back to school. These opportunities are there for you. You can further your education if you do not wish to go to the same school. You can further your education online. There are so many ways to continue living your life. And back then, for example, as well, when our children made mistakes, the first thing we do is we put them out. You put them out of the house, especially our girls. So they have a little boyfriend, they like that little boy down the road, but that's not the boy down the road you want for them. You put them out. But when you put them out, what are you doing? You put them out in the streets for whom? For what? So I think there's a lot of lessons for us to learn as parents, as mothers. Of course, our children, when they become of age, they will participate and do things that maybe we do not approve of. But it is their lives that they are living. You teach them, you train them the best that you can. But there has to be a time when you know that you can no longer control them as they were babies. They now have to go out, they have to make mistakes, they have to fall down. And it's one thing I say to all my children, whatever it is you choose to do, just know that your mother is always there. I may not approve of what is it that you want to do, but when you get yourself in the Go after you've learned your lesson, you can always come home because your mother will always be there. So if we want to create strong leaders, we need to let our children know that we will always be there for them, that we will never give up on them, no matter what. We will always be there for them. I think maybe some of these things, if we do it a bit more, we will perhaps have stronger leaders. So I have two beautiful daughters. In fact, the first one, every day I say, oh my God, my girl, I don't know how your husband is going to handle it. She's like her mother. She takes after her mother. So my husband has been able to handle it for the last 20-something years. So perhaps, but she's a dynamic young lady. She's very strong. She knows what she's about. From a very early age, I could trust her, and I know, she knows where she wants to go. So I didn't have any doubts in her, and I think for me, I have been very blessed with having, because I don't think it was really me. I think it's the hands of God, but I've been very blessed in having those young ladies. And I see their leadership. I see how they grow up at the school, in the various establishments they participate in. They just grow up as young leaders, and I'm very, very proud of them.
Very nice. Thank you so very much, Mrs. Charles.
So, Malaika,
yes,
moderator.
Go ahead, Senator Polius.
Okay, yes. So my advice to any woman or young girl who aspires to be a leader is to start off by being part of a community-based group. Because what we realize is that there are leaders, but not necessarily effective leaders in our society. And effective leadership requires hard work. It requires time, commitment, tenacity, and even sometimes compromises with your personal life. So if you begin the process by being part of a community-based group, you advocate for change, positive change. You support and you build others. You show others that you care. I believe that you would have a very good reason for becoming a leader. You set your goals, and Ms. Charles alluded to it. There are some young ladies, young girls, who do not even know what they would like to achieve. They don't set goals for themselves. So if you really want to be a leader, and you want to be a good leader, an effective leader, you need to be able to articulate those goals. And also talk about or think about your contribution. What contribution you would like to make towards the enhancement of your community. And of course, it's going to be challenging, but there is need to believe in yourself. Ignore the negativity and the frequent "you are not good enough." That talk that goes around, idle talk. You are not good enough. You don't have what it takes. Dismiss that from the very get-go and adopt a growth mindset. That I can do this, I am capable, and with the necessary support, I can make a difference in my community. Now, the temptation to focus on your inadequacies and limitations will come, but try not to focus on them. Over the years, as an individual and as a community leader, I learned how to constantly remind myself that my family's socio-economic circumstances would not deter me. As a matter of fact, I use my family's struggles, my family's hardship to propel me in life. And I say this to every young woman, every young girl. you set yourself some realistic goals and do not consider or think so much about what you are lacking, what you don't have. An awareness of what you are lacking or your shortcomings, your limitations, should serve as an opportunity for you to take the necessary steps to overcome and to get better. Be open to new ideas and perspectives because you do not know it all. Nobody knows it all. Never lose sight of who you are and where you came from. And most of all, young women, young girls who aspire to become effective leaders, pray and give thanks. That's my advice to you.
Thank you so very much, Senator Polius. I mean, what a good way to sort of end. I'm not sure if Dr. Fontenelle has any contribution to make or if she wants to make a final contribution. Dr. Fontenelle?
Thank you. Let me just say to Miss Henry that congratulations. I'm proud of her, and she's actually in the right direction, especially as we are in this COVID-19 pandemic, because it has been, the research shows that the good paying jobs that is going to propel us into the future for success. You need to have the expertise in maths, in research, science, technology. So she's well on the right track, and it would be nice if she could serve as motivation for a lot of the young girls that we have, persons aspiring to take a different direction than the norm that exists. Too often we look at those kinds of professions and we start looking we look within our structure and we figure there's no need, or we can't have too many of a certain expertise. But the time has come for us to think outside the box. The time has come for us to embrace whatever opportunities that exist. With the era of technology now, with most persons having access to cell phones and internet connections, with social media, there is a lot of bad, but there is a lot of good. And this is where, as Ms. Polius said, you need to know yourself, you need to ground yourself in your ideals, your values. You need to practice humility. You need to pray a lot so God can guide you in the right direction, so you know what to absorb, and so you're able to determine what is not going to take you forward or take you in the right direction, and leave it, set it aside. This field, even with the challenges of COVID, there are many persons who have actually found new avenues. Persons have had to abandon careers that they knew for so long, and work opportunities that they were well grounded in, and they were forced into a different direction. But there are many persons who are very happy about that, because it actually took them to places that they didn't know. They didn't know they had such capabilities. Another thing I want to say to the young girls, it goes for everybody, but more so young girls and ladies who want to be in leadership positions. Yes, you have the issue with the pandemic, which obviously has a very negative economic impact for now. So persons are probably, the idea of actually going to school and looking to see where the money is probably coming from might seem very frightening. But let me tell you, right now, you can access so many sites online that you could do free courses. When you do the courses, don't look at courses or think, oh, it's just an online course. Sometimes all you need is the knowledge, which is going to give you the basics that you need, or the groundwork to push yourself further in something else. The opportunity may present itself. A lot of these certificates, they are actually very valid. Another thing that is worthy of noting is that this is the right time. Why? Because before it seemed like the acceptable thing was to go over to a university, sit in a classroom setting, and then your qualification was considered better than somebody who did it online. But guess what? Now everybody has to do things virtually. So these certificates, these degrees now that seem like they were second to the best, are now actually what is being accepted. So this is the time now where you can actually sit down while you're trying to feed yourself, feed your body, your spirit, your mind. You're feeling depressed that you're out of a job. It probably wouldn't cost too much to just browse through the internet and look for something. It doesn't have to be a degree in the sciences, but there are many soft skills that you can learn. I have heard of persons who actually learn to play a piano on certain apps. They've learned to write music on certain apps. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but I'm sure you would be able to find something that drives your interest, at least for now. You never know where this can take you. So this is very important, that whereas we are going through these challenges, there are certain little things that you could use to your advantage. And as I indicated, one of it is getting a certificate program, or even just an online course. They're free ones that is actually going to educate you a little more. It doesn't mean that it will probably get you into a next job or a top position, but at least education is never too much. Knowledge is never too much. Knowledge is power. You empower yourself. It actually teaches you to think. It teaches you so many things. It teaches you, there's so many little management courses. And when I say management, I'm not talking about accounts management or managing an office. I'm talking about even little things like how to manage depression, how to manage anger, how to manage anxiety. All these things that you could do in the meantime while you're waiting to see how we can go back into the new normal, for the possibilities or the avenues that's going to push you into where you want to go to. So you need to pray a lot, depending on each other, finding positive persons around you, not necessarily. It's very easy for everybody, for most persons around you to make it sound like this is the end of the world, and it gets so depressing. And so you now have to find that pocket or that space for yourself where you pull yourself away from too much negativity and try to see how you can empower yourself. But with all of that, you have to know who you are. You also have to know what it is that you would desire in life to make a meaningful contribution. Sometimes, in my case, when I feel down, I try to do something nice for somebody. Because the worst thing for me is to feel down and then to go and drag somebody down with me, and they must feel down because I am. So I try to do something nice. It actually lifts your spirit, because while you're in a zone, you can actually make somebody smile. And believe me, that smile from this person comes back to you, and it actually lifts you up. So this is the power of unity, depending on each other, lifting each other up, not necessarily accepting everything that somebody has said or being afraid to point out corrections, but doing it in a respectful manner, doing it in a manner that suggests that you want growth and not necessarily putting persons down. And I think this is very important, so I wanted to share that.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Fontenelle. If nobody has any final contribution, I would just like to leave a final thought to our viewers and to our listeners. Remember, a challenged world is an alert world, and from challenges comes change. A challenged world is an alert world, and from challenges comes change. So let us work together to create an inclusive world free from gender bias and inequality. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our 4 female panelists for their valuable contributions this evening. I mean, it was I really enjoyed it, although it's my first time. Yes, yeah. To the management of Sky FM, to Honorable Guy Joseph.
My first as well.
Oh, your okay.
New to this. I'm new to this.
Yeah, I'm new to this, so I'm learning. Thanks to the party for empowering me and to giving me that sort of exposure. Yeah, thank you to our viewers and our listeners. I want to say thank you to the United Workers' Party Women's Arm Executive and to all the other women. A special shout out. Thank you to our UWP executive. And again, thank you. Good night. And it was nice being here.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you very much
Good
for the
night,
opportunity.
ladies.
Thanks for everyone.
Bye.
Very nice.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Everybody
very much.
have a
Goodbye.
well,
All right.
Okay. Oh, you guys are in the comfort of your home and we have to drive home.
Yes, we'll keep you in our thoughts.
We
Okay.
can drink to that. We can drink to
sure
that, you know.
Well, I have some water to drink.
Miss Police will not go to bed until you have arrived.
Okay, well, that would be in an hour's time because I'm heading to Viewfort. So, Farah, you're on the phone with me till I get home.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, all right. Get
All
home
right.
safely.
Take
Alrighty.
care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bueno, me la café, bye. 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 Bueno, me la café, bye.